I realized just the other day that it was 8 years since we found out some really scary and devastating news about our son. Now, he is now 7.5 years old, and at that time I was pregnant with him. And I had just had a miscarriage, and after that we were having complications in the beginning stages of my pregnancy with him. And my doctor basically told me, prepare yourself, you're probably gonna lose this baby as well. And so that was obviously, like, for any parent, a very scary time, a really sad time. And once you find out that you're pregnant, you basically fall in love and you want that baby. You don't want anything to happen to that child. You want to protect it. You want to make sure it's okay. And so to hear the doctor say, prepare yourself, you're going to lose this child, it was incredibly difficult. It was just so incredibly hard. All of my numbers were indicating that the pregnancy was not viable, that the baby was going to die, and I basically didn't have anything in my favor as far as like all of my numbers were concerned. They were, almost sure that the baby wasn't going to make it. But thankfully, everything obviously worked out fine because John is still here. And so we, progressed for part of the pregnancy and everything looked great. I was super, super sick. I was throwing up all the time, which I do in all of my pregnancies. And so yeah, like we thought, well, everything's fine. I remember always thinking, well, like I'm really, really sick. So that's a good sign. That means things are going okay. And I was sick for basically that entire pregnancy. And we got to the middle of the pregnancy where they do the gestational ultrasound, where they kind of like check all the parts of the baby to see if everything is okay. And at that point, he's our fourth baby. He was actually our sixth pregnancy at that point, because we'd already had 2 miscarriages before that. And so I was very, familiar with ultrasounds. I knew what they felt like, what they sounded like, how like the ultrasound technician reacted and things like that. And so she was going through and like looking over things, and she kept pausing at the brain, like over and over again. She would like measure things and look at things on his head. And then she was also like measuring his femur and like things like that. And it was just like, she kept focusing on the same parts over and over again. And then she wasn't giving us any information. And so if any of you guys have been in that situation, like as soon as the ultrasound tech is not giving you information, it probably means that something is up. So she went through and kind of did everything, got all the measurements that she needed. And then she said, okay, I'm going to go talk to the doctor and I will be right back. And at that time, we actually had a midwife. The midwife delivered, how many? 3 out of 5 of my babies. So I guess was the second time we were using that midwife. And so it wasn't her that came in. It was actually like the doctor who oversees everything. And he actually had delivered my daughter. So I was familiar with him. I actually really, really liked him. He was a really great doctor. And he came in and was just kind of like very matter of fact about it and said like, this is the situation. This is what is going on with your baby's brain. And this could mean that your child has Down syndrome. And this could possibly mean that your child has trisomy 18. If you've heard of trisomy 18, you know that there isn't a chance of survival, at least for any long period of time. I remember, because I did a ton of research about it, I remember seeing like some babies that obviously lived past pregnancy, and I think some that even lived to like 1 year old, but it's a very low quality of life, and they don't live for very long, unfortunately. And so he said that like, as far as the brain was concerned, it was not normal, and there were cysts on the brain, or I don't know if he called them cysts at that time. He said something about the brain, and we knew that it could mean that our baby was going to die, which was really, really, as you can imagine, was really, really hard to hear. And so they told us we're going to schedule another ultrasound in 4 weeks to see if anything has changed. And at that point, we'll kind of, move forward with whatever the situation may be. And we also knew at that point as well that our baby was small. He was smaller than average, but he wasn't like super small. It was just like he was smaller than average, and he had this situation with his brain that was abnormal. And they just really kind of weren't sure at that point what was going on, because I think almost everything else looked fine. It's just that one of the things that they look for is like, I think in Down syndrome, they look for that femur bone. And if it's like slightly smaller, I'm pretty sure, if I'm wrong about this, forgive me. But I remember them saying like his femur bone was like within normal limits or whatever, but it was like on the small side. And so that could be an indication of something, or it could just be like he's just a smaller baby. And so, so like we walked away from that appointment thinking, oh my goodness, we could lose our baby. And we had just lost the previous baby in a miscarriage. And at this point, I'm already 20 weeks along. And so it was just really scary. And I remember that I didn't start Googling things at the beginning because I was just like, I don't want to know, like, I don't want to think about this. It's too scary. But then I started doing research and I started reading. Honestly, I wasn't super concerned about Down syndrome. That would not matter to me at all. I was concerned about the trisomy 18, knowing I knew a family that their child had trisomy 18 and she lived to 30 days. And I knew another family and their baby died in utero. They had a stillbirth, or yeah, they had a stillbirth. And yeah, so it was just really, it was a really, really scary time. And sadly, at the same time, my husband was in Italy on business, or not in Italy, but in Europe. And he was actually going through a couple different countries at the time. He was gone for 2 weeks, I think, of that time, this like limbo time where we didn't know if our baby was going to live or die. It was really scary. And so while he was there, he was in Italy going to like the big cathedrals, and he was just like praying, and just, you know, we had tons of friends and family praying that somehow this would be nothing. Somehow it would just resolve and our baby would be fine and it wouldn't be a big deal. And so he came home from his trip to Europe, and we had our appointment with the ultrasound tech. And I guess they like scheduled it with the ultrasound tech who was like the best in the group or whatever, like the one who'd been there the longest. And she was really, really wonderful, like super sweet and kind. And she went through and kind of did all the measurements again just to check everything. And once again, like she didn't really talk, which you always think like as soon as they're not talking, you're like, this is bad. Like they're not saying anything, something must be wrong. But at that point, the doctor didn't come in. Our midwife came in. So I kind of like knew, okay, like that's a good sign. Like the doctor's not back again. So the midwife comes into the room and kind of looks over everything. And then I remember she looked over at me. She actually put her hand like on my hand, and she said, I forget how many years she'd been a midwife, like 30 years or something like that. She's like, I've been a midwife for 30 years. She's like, I've never seen this happen before, but your baby's brain is completely normal. Like there was nothing wrong with his brain anymore. His brain looked completely normal. I'm like gonna cry just thinking about it right now. And so he was healed. Like he was miraculously healed. Everything that they had seen on the previous ultrasound, like they showed us the 2 ultrasound comparisons of his brain. And the first one, it had like what is it called? Like it was misformed. That's not the word I'm looking for, but it was just like it didn't look like it the way it was supposed to look. And then in the next ultrasound, it looked perfect. And he had nothing wrong with him. And everything else was fine. He was still small. He was on the smaller side, but it wasn't like abnormally small. It was just like smaller than average. So at that point, they basically like gave us the go ahead that we were fine. Like we weren't, because they had talked about us having to see like a special doctor. And at that point, we weren't gonna have to see the doctor anymore. And everything was just like a normal pregnancy from that point on. And then he was born. And of course, like his labor was by far my hardest, the worst labor of all 5 of my children. It was just really, really hard. And then when he was born, he wasn't breathing. And so like it was, everything about his life has just been like difficult, honestly, like from the moment we knew we were pregnant until even now. He's got some special needs, but nothing that is like holding him back. He's an amazing, so smart, so funny, adorable child. But he's just had a lot of struggles over the years. And so, but the fact that he's here, that he did not die is just a miracle. Like it is a miracle. She said she'd never seen anything like that resolve, like and just completely go away. And he's our miracle boy. And that's just what I wanted to share with you guys today, because it's been 8 years since all of that happened. And I'm just incredibly, incredibly grateful.